morning. We have a new graphic design intern who's working with us right now, and he was really excited that I was talking to you all today. And he was like, Patrice, this needs to look really good, and we need to have motion in it. So I have some motion, which I'm happy to see kind of fits into the overall theme with these intros and titles. But as Morgan said, I'm Patrice Martin. I'm the co-lead and creative director of IDEO.org, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. We're a 15-person nonprofit that focuses on the bringing of design to the challenges of poverty. And we started about a year and a half ago. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the things we're learning by being a new type of organization and working in really different contexts and circumstances for design. But first, I wanted to just share a little bit about myself. I come from IDEO, where I was a designer for 8 years before founding IDEO.org. And this image I wanted to share because many of you probably know Bill Mogridge, who's one of IDEO's founders, who passed away recently. And he was just a phenomenal man and a phenomenal designer. And really, to me, represented much of the ethos and fun and creativity that became IDEO's culture and shaped the way in which I think about design. So just a little shout out to Bill. My background has sort of nothing to do with designing for poverty before I started doing this work inside of IDEO. Much of my time over the past 8 years before doing this at IDEO was all private sector types of challenges, like looking at things like the future of business travel, or how we design loyalty for elite athletes, or looking at what might happen if you put Mayo Clinic in the Mall of America. Really interesting and divergent types of challenges, and I think many of us as designers get to think and use our brains in this way. And for me, it really represents the power of design to look across things that are so different, but really find the ways in which design can be truly valuable. And that's eventually what brought me to looking at social impact and how we design for poverty, because I think my path has sort of been this one of unintentional curiosity that led me to different types of challenges. And when I finally got here, these to me represented some of the most interesting and some of the most difficult challenges that are so critical for our world, but it's the place where I think design, it's growing, but right now sort of has the least reach. So we think about design as this way to see the world, and this has been referenced a lot already in the past afternoon and today. We know the power of it as a problem-solving tool, but also as a way to just kind of reframe questions and get to different perspectives and different answers that we believe is so powerful. And this is really the impetus for IDEO.org. And why we did this, what are you guys doing setting up a nonprofit? It really came from the fact that we wanted to be able to do work at a scale that we couldn't do inside of IDEO. So there's such fantastic nonprofits and social enterprises and foundations who are doing amazing work, and we wanted to be able to reach them. And if we stayed inside of IDEO, we couldn't grow at the way we thought the market would allow us to if we were outside. So we essentially did a little design project on ourselves and arrived at the fact that if we became a 501c nonprofit that would sit alongside of IDEO, it would allow us to really streamline the organization, built off the infrastructure that we could use from IDEO and receive philanthropic contributions. And this really started as an investigation that was more from a financial perspective, how do we get ourselves to be affordable? But where it ended was as a mission-driven organization. And with that, you say, okay, well, what's your mission? And our mission was really to say we want to bring more design to challenges that we believe are really important for this world, and those focusing on poverty. So we think about impact in 3 ways. And the first is design, no surprise to anyone, but this is about partnering with organizations and saying, how can we make them more innovative and more effective? And it's been interesting for us as a learning journey to say, okay, we're now a nonprofit. We need to be selecting based on a challenge, based on an opportunity for its potential for impact on the world, and kind of leave behind our old habits of selecting clients based on revenue. We also really then said, okay, if what we want to do is to have design have a bigger presence here, we need to invest in the future leaders who are going to be making decisions in this space. And this resulted in our fellowship program, where we bring designers and social sector experts together and kind of mash them up and have them work as one design team for a year. And the intention of this is to take designers and say, we want to give them exposure to the complexity and challenges of poverty so they can apply this to the way in which they work and think, and to take folks who have experience on the ground with nonprofits and give them the know-how of what a design approach can do for these types of challenges. So we're now on our second class of fellows, which has been a pretty wild ride. And lastly, we're really committed to being open with our work. And we see ourselves as contributing to a movement that I believe we're all a part of in how we bring design to this space in a more powerful way. So we are quite intentional about sharing all of our work. We've started a new platform called HCD Connect, where we're hoping that designers and practitioners everywhere can be sharing tips and tricks and advice on the ways in which they're solving problems. And just to start to say what happens with design as this movement. And things are, we're seeing things change. A couple weeks ago, the Clinton Global Initiative, their theme was actually designing for impact, and President Clinton is on the stage and using design as if he's been like a designer his entire life. And I think that really speaks to what we're all building. So I'm going to talk about what we're finding in the work and how design gets pushed and is different, but also things that we feel like are really similar to the ways in which we all work every day. And the first is learning from new markets. And I think, in a way, this is the most striking difference for me about working with challenges related to poverty in the developing world. And most things are harder about being a designer in this space, but prototyping is like the one thing that's not. And if you're in the US and you want to say, let's actually open a store and see what merchandise sells, and that's not the easiest thing to do, like by tomorrow, right? But if you're in Kenya, you can make those things happen. So we use the term here, beta typing, because you can actually be in the real environment and learn from the market, not in a simulated way, but from a way of actually saying, let's just make it happen and see what we learn. So this is a project that we partnered with Unilever and the nonprofit Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor and the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, and set out around a hypothesis that said, what would happen if we made a consumer-facing offer that brought together water and health access? So we tried a bunch of things. And this really happened in 2 weeks. And so we get to different questions. We get to more nuanced questions, and we get to answers faster because we're able to do it in real time and learn. And so we're able to say, if we want to figure out whether people will buy water in advance, let's get our interpreters to kind of act as water sellers and see what happens. We're also learning a lot about brand, and by no means do I mean to suggest that this is graphic design genius, but we've found that brand is a necessity in every single thing that we prototype because consumers really do demand it. If we want them to believe that our offer is credible, that there's people behind it, that there has aspiration for life change, it needs to look serious. And with part of my kind of journey around this work is like the first brand project that we were doing here, we were just kind of excited we're working in Ghana, and the team was really stimulated by the hand-painted signs and the beauty of the sort of visual fabric of the city, and kind of responded with things that felt like very crafty and lovely. And we went to test them, and people were like, no, 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 this looks like something that got made in the store next door. You know, what we want is to feel like there's some real power and there's some real change. So it's been interesting to design brands and to design offers in parallel right from the start. And this is pushing us to act differently. As a practitioner, for me, it's been different, obviously, to come into the space, and it can be overwhelming, and it can feel so foreign, and I think you can feel stripped of the tools that you usually use just on a daily basis. Like, we all kind of mix in inspiration and insight and intuition into how we work, and when you're in a really different place, you can kind of lean more heavily on insight and not know what to do with intuition or inspiration. It doesn't feel as accessible as it is. And these things are still critically important to our roles as designers here, but they just have to get repositioned, and we have to find our way back to them. And one of the ways in which we're doing that is through building up focus areas and places where we're working in the same type of content. When we tell folks in the social sector that we focus on poverty, they're always like, that's not a focus, you know, that's everything. And when we tell designers, and we tell IDEO that we only work on poverty, they're like, that is so limiting, how do you guys stay inspired? And so we think this might actually be a sweet spot where we can start to learn and see patterns, but at the same time, give us enough flex to be inspired. So one of the places where we're doing that is with early childhood education, and we've been looking at parent engagement and how we get young people's brains to develop. And last year we did a piece of work that resulted in a campaign around repositioning the idea of parents engaging their kids. And right now a lot of the messaging in this space is about reading, and we find that reading isn't always the thing that draws parents in. It may not be a place where they've had success in their own lives, but giving them back power to kind of use their own worlds is. And I have the words humble experts up here because I think this is a really fine line that designers have to balance when we're working in contexts that are so different than our own. And the first is that humility is incredibly important, right? You will not be the expert in this space. You know, you have to learn along with the community, and you have to design with them. But at the same time, I think Emily Hilton mentioned yesterday, you know, sprinkle that magic pixie dust. There is value into the reason why you're there. And there's an audacity, a boldness, an ability to take things to new places that designers bring and can give to these challenges. We have since been able to continue on with that work with a new nonprofit, or a new challenge for us with a nonprofit called CAP Community Action Project based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they look at the relationship between kids and parents and breaking intergenerational poverty. And we've been getting them to prototype the idea of circles, where instead of instructors coming in to give programs, parents form circles themselves and stay in neighborhoods and can actually have like an authentic voice, and the content seems relevant. For this nonprofit, I mean, those things are really hard changes to make, but it was exciting for us to see design as this way to start to take small risks and try things out. And when I was in a meeting last week where one of our clients was explaining to someone on her team that this didn't necessarily mean it was the end solution. What it was a learning process to find out what might work and to evolve into new things that they could do. And to me, this was sort of like the most exciting moment. Like, we're succeeding when we can get organizations to act differently and own this process. This has also come up a lot, but for me it's been different in how we have to think of ourselves as designing for networks, right? There's no one client. There's many organizations that are acting together to try and create change. And last year, we had the opportunity to work with the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves. And they asked us to look at cook stove adoption and to essentially come up with a report of insights and opportunities, which we felt like was all fine. But really, when we think about what design can bring to this, we need to push it farther. And we need to show ourselves as like storytellers, and the way in which experience and sort of viscerally getting something can bring real power and bring real influence. So what we then did was say, okay, we'll do a report, but we'll also make a video that we believe will get at much more of communicating the essence of this problem. So I'm a little short on time, so I'm only going to show you guys a quick clip of it. But so that was something we were able to share quite openly with the network, and the Global Alliance has a really great connection to many different organizations. And what was powerful for us is that this work then got distributed to organizations that we actually had no contact with during the actual phase of the project. And they have then communicated with us that they were changing the way in which they were designing cook stoves based on the learnings that they had from this work. So it's been exciting to say that, you know, a project is not a starting point, it's not an ending point, it's a piece of all of the work that we're doing together, and to think of the way in which we're using design as influence as much as the artifact or the offer that we create. I'm also just going to touch upon a couple things that we're doing that I think are interesting in the fact that we're now a little nonprofit and we have a different type of model. And so we're learning about what it's like to be a new organization. One of the things that I'm excited about, speaking of designing in networks, is we've been, a funder of ours has given us or helped us set up something called an innovation fund that allows us to choose organizations that we work with and they apply. And how we've set this up is to actually then say to organizations that we really respect, who have great networks of their own, like Skull and Omidyar and Draper Richards and Acumen Fund, and ask them to nominate organizations who then apply, and we've been able to then select 4 organizations that we continue with design services. So then we're actually thinking about all of the organizations who apply, the places that we focus in, and the partners and the networks that surround them. The social sector has long lead times. I mean, it can take us anywhere from like 6 months to 2 years to get a project to actually start. Many of you have probably experienced this. And so it's pushed us to actually change our own model instead of just acting responsively to requests, to say, let's think about how we can plan out chunks of work and at the same time be conscious of the intensity and that this work has for our teams, and to figure out ways to structure in breaks and reflection. And that's been something new that we're excited about this year. We also, as I say, have a fellowship program, and it's been a challenge at first to say, okay, we have all these new people coming in, now we want them to act like designers. And that felt very constricting in some ways. And what we've been able to learn is that, you know, these folks bring with them their own amazing expertise and networks and talents that we need to be able to leverage as an organization as a whole, rather than just trying to fit them into specific spots. So once we kind of opened up to that possibility, great things sort of have been happening. And affecting IDEO might be a strong term, but we've really benefited, obviously, from being housed within IDEO, because we get inspired by the amazing stuff going on there all the time. But it's been cool for us to see how the ways in which we're acting differently as an organization and things that we're learning from kind of being on the edge of the work has also changed the way the firm is responding and the way in which they're sort of modeling some of their projects and actions. So I wanted to just end with this quote from one of our fellows last year who said, "I'm learning, but it's not what I thought I would," at a midpoint retreat that we had. And she said, I kind of came into this and I thought I was gonna learn about color and how to make a product. And I haven't learned any of that. But what I've learned is how to be human-centered and how to be open to many different ideas at once and how to take risks and be comfortable with things evolving and changing. And to me, this really represented the best kind of learning. And I think it's also the path that we're all on as we bring design to these new places that need it so intensely. And it's the beginning of a journey, and we're all kind of figuring things out as we go, and some of those things are not what we thought they would be, but they're really critically important. So thank you.